So next session is called Doing the Right Thing is Good Business. So right thing or right price, can you do both? Our speaker is the MD of one of the UK's leading energy and waste consultants. And he says yes. From Sustainable Advantage, it's James Stander.
You'll have to go easy on me today. This is only the second time I've spoken in front of so many people. The last time was 2 years ago. There were 30 people in the audience. The guy before me spoke for an hour on fire, and I was then due to speak for an hour on the impending doom of civilization through climate change. So it was an uplifting day for those 30 people. So luckily today's topic is a little bit more positive, and it's whether doing the right thing and business go hand in hand. And I think it can. So if I was a matchmaker, I'd love to put this lovely couple together. On the left, we've got Greta Thunberg, who believes that if you and your family go on a well-earned holiday and you go via airplane and not via sailboat, that you're all going to go to hell. And Jeremy Clarkson, who, when told that in 50 years there's a very good chance that Blackpool would be lost underwater through rising sea levels, felt that there were worse things to lose than Blackpool. So whether you are on Greta's side or Jeremy's side, the reality is that if you're selling your goods and services into corporate, blue chip corporates, you're going to have a very well thought out ESG strategy plan and metrics to back up what you're doing. So I've called my talk going from 2 to 10, and you'll see why in a second. So I arrived in the UK 22 years ago, a bit like Crocodile Dundee, but from South Africa. And I came here for two things. I came here for the great weather and to try and earn some good currency, as the rand was at about 20 to 1 at that stage. And don't worry, there are a few blank slides because it's not the UK winter picture of my first day in England with the snow. So I arrived in the UK and I spent 5 years at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I advised mostly FMs and property services companies on acquisitions. I did that for 5 years, absolutely loved it, but I felt like I was more of an entrepreneur than I was a rich PwC partner, which I probably thought I'd never get to that stage. And so I convinced two of the high net worths that I'd advised to back me and to say, look, I think go and create or build an FM company from what I'd seen over the last 5 years. And they said, no problem, James, if you can find us that investment, we'll back you and we'll see what you can do. It was harder than I thought. I spent 11 months trying to find a platform business that we could invest in that was different and could grow. And Lucy Janes, who I see here today, actually introduced me to a guy called Martin in Welwyn Garden City. He was a real salt of the earth guy. He'd been there for 30 years. His dad was the MD before that for 20 years. And at that stage, they had about a £12 million cleaning and security business. And he was one of 13 brothers and sisters. And on a Saturday, his dad would bundle them in the car, and they'd go and wash windows around Welwyn Garden City. Luckily, there was no modern slavery policies back then, so they got away with that. But we convinced Martin to allow us to invest in the business and to try and create something of value. The challenge was we turned over 13 million, and the big guys were at 500-600 million, and we couldn't really compete. 3-4 years down the track, we were growing very, very slowly, and we got an opportunity to tender for a big utilities contract. It was a water utility. It was a £7 million TFM contract, and I was tasked with winning this contract. And so for 3 weeks, I put blood, sweat, and tears into the document, poured everything we could into it. And at night, I dreamt about a plaque being unveiled at Welwyn Garden City, thanking me for the contract that I'd won. Prince Charles was going to be there. He was going to cut the ribbon and pull that cord you see on the right-hand side. My family was there, and it was going to be just a fantastic experience. And obviously, they would be there for years to come. I got a call 3 weeks later. James, I want to thank you for your hard work on the tender. Now, when a client thanks you for your hard work, it's not a good thing. It's actually a bit like getting a merit award at school. And so, James, come in and see me. You unfortunately came second. So that was the end of the plaque. And we went in and I had the debrief. And the score was out of 50. There were 5 areas that we were scored. And we're up against what is still, I won't mention the name, probably the poster boys of the FM sector. We're back in 2010 and still pretty much are today. And there were 5 areas, scored out of 10. First 4, your typical price, service delivery, mobilization risk, etc. And we were neck and neck. And we got to before we went to the 5th area, and I said, look, what's the score? He said, James, you were absolutely neck and neck. There was no difference up until now. So I said, what was the last area? And he said, it was sustainability. So I said, okay, I couldn't even really remember if there was a sustainability section in there, but apparently there was. And we scored 2 out of 10, which wasn't very good, but the other guys scored 3 out of 10. And when I looked at that and I thought, we're a tiny company, these guys 700, 800 million, and they scored 3 out of 10. So I went back to the MD and I said, look, we've got to start a sustainability division, we've got to take this seriously. And they said, well, look, we do believe in it, but it's for another day. And so I said, look, would you mind? I really believe that this is an important thing. I'm going to go and do it on my own. So 2 months after that, I set up Sustainable Advantage. That was in April 2010. Today, it was a tough couple of years. There wasn't the interest there is today in ESG or sustainability back in 2010. It was very, very difficult the first 3 years. But today we've got about 350 clients that we work with on a retained basis, whereby we take them on their ESG journey. And that's about a 3-year journey from a standing position to getting closer to the scores of 8, 9, or 10 out of 10. So there's no sticky plasters being put on things. We don't tell people to put pictures of polar bears stranded on small bits of ice. There's none of that. It's really about a journey that you've got to go on, and it takes time to do it properly. So we're engaged with those clients. We also work with large blue chip companies that are saying, James, work with our tier 1 supply chain, help them improve. And also a lot of private equity companies that are about to buy a business are saying, James, can you go and vet these guys and see if they're ESG responsible businesses? So I wanted to talk to you today with the last sort of 10 minutes I've got left in terms of what sort of framework should people put in place to improve their ESG credentials for not only their benefit, but also for the benefit of the stakeholders, because the talk is about doing the right thing, so benefiting other people, not just the corporate. But I do feel that a company that's winning sales, growing, can pay staff more, can invest in community, so it does work well together. So the first thing is to create an ESG committee supported by green teams. We see a lot of companies that are doing the right thing, but it's sporadic and it's not controlled, it's not, there's no strategy behind it. And we also, you need to create an ESG committee that's responsible for the program, and that those guys need to be from the cross-section of the business, so HR, finance, procurement, estates, across the whole business, board-level sponsor, but also people from the shop floor, so to speak. And they need to be supported by green teams on site, because again, you can't have this happening at the head office and no one on site involved. The second bit is a stakeholder materiality assessment. Now, my wife likes flowers, I like eating. So if I go to London and I take her out every Friday night and I spend £150 on a meal for the 2 of us, I'll be happy and I'm thinking I'm doing the right thing, but she wants flowers. And so it's really important to actually engage with your stakeholders, clients, staff, suppliers, communities, and understand what's important to them. At the moment, net zero is a big topic, and if you're not addressing that and you're thinking it's recycling or something else, then you're going to be misaligned with your clients. Next is you need to assess your current ESG credentials. Where are you? Now, there's probably about 65 different areas that we would assess a company on, so it's broad, it's a lot. But you need to understand where you are currently, and again, going back to that materiality assessment, where are you versus where your clients are expecting you to be. Identify what metrics you're tracking. Very important. We come across a lot of companies that are doing loads of things, but don't have any metrics to share with their stakeholders. And the problem with that is you then end up with a marketing document where you're just telling people, well, you know, we love polar bears, we love the environment, we love trees, we love our staff. But if you can't prove how many apprentices you've hired, how many of those apprentices were given full-time jobs, how many of those apprentices have gone on to managerial positions, etc., it actually all falls flat. So a lot of the work we're doing is to say, look, understand what people are expecting you to track, and then put in place the processes to track those metrics. We then have obviously a 12-month action plan, so a lot of people are trying to focus, I think, too far in the future. Really, you've got to work in 12-month chunks, and that really is taking all that you've learned up until that stage and putting it into an action plan, which is then delivered by that ESG committee. And then importantly, create a communications plan. You know, we think we should do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, but I also feel people should get credit for when they are doing the right thing. And so we have a recommendation that everyone should have an annual ESG impact report, which they produce, and a lot of the big FM companies that are doing those, and they look really good. But also, of course, in the year when you're reaching milestones like becoming carbon neutral again, you know, release that to your key clients. So we have communications plans with our clients, key clients. Then in terms of the last bit is what quick, meaningful wins can you actually get to, which is not going to cost necessarily a massive amount of money. It's going to be good for you to get your scores up from 2s, 3s, 4s, up to closer to 10. And then importantly, to also make sure that, of course, as we said, the talk is about making sure that other people win, not just yourselves. So the first area is energy. What are blue chip corporates expecting? Number one, procure energy from electric sources, from renewable sources, electricity. It's no more expensive than brown for the first stage of electricity. Of course, gas is in a very strange place, and with what's going on today, it's going to be even a lot worse. So people aren't expecting you to buy renewable gas at the moment, but renewable electricity, absolutely. Be able to articulate how much energy you're using and that energy is being reduced year on year via capex investment and also via behavioural change. Quick win is to engage an energy broker. There are a lot of bad energy brokers out there, but there are also a lot of good energy brokers, and they'll do a lot of the heavy lifting for you guys in this area, especially to provide data. On waste, quick win there is again to engage a waste broker that'll do a lot of the data gathering, which is the key forerunner to actually be able to improve anything. Quick wins there, of course, up in the recycling rate, costs go down, of course, good for the environment, good for carbon footprinting. Vehicles is a tough one because, of course, everyone's trying to move towards EV. But that's a picture of one of your engineers. That's his 5th girlfriend in 5 months, and his clothes are being thrown out of the London office block, and you're trying to ask him where you want his home EV car charger installed. He can't tell you. She knows exactly where he can shove it. But of course, yeah, that presents a challenge. Everyone's trying to move to EV, but it is actually difficult to do. But some quick wins is there's relatively cost-effective training programs that staff can go on to drive more energy efficiently, and also telematics will help in that process as well, and also help you understand which your staff could actually have car chargers at home based on how far they travel and whether they own their homes, etc. Carbon is the next bit, probably the biggest topic at the moment. Glad to hear the guys are even going as far as offsetting today's conference, which is great. Calculating carbon footprint has now gone from what was Scope 1 and Scope 2, very, very basic operational footprint, electricity, gas, and transport, and it's now into Scope 3. So pretty much all of our clients are now being asked for their net zero journey, which is a tough thing to do. It really is. It's not easy to calculate and to calculate that with any accuracy, but everybody's expected now to have a net zero journey. A key part of that is offsetting, and how does that get done? What projects are being funded? A lot of people think that offsetting is a bit like paying someone else to go and diet for you, and I can understand why they think that, but actually offsetting, when done properly, is actually a very good thing, because not only is it going to help from the carbon side, but a lot of the projects help in developed areas where they are funding training, building infrastructure, and providing local jobs. So there's the sustainable development goals that often come with a good offsetting project. So quick win there is really, it's not expensive to develop a net zero plan. The consultants I know are trying to charge a lot at the moment. It is expensive to find consultants who know what they're doing, but it's something you absolutely have to do. And again, offsetting at the moment is getting more expensive, but at the moment it's actually not too bad to offset. Then getting onto the social side of things, staff, you could probably talk for days on all the stuff that you could end up doing for your staff, and that's around recruitment, diversity, equality, inclusion, training and development, physical and mental well-being, pay levels, pay equity. There's a lot in there which we wouldn't have time to cover now, but a lot of those areas actually just take time. And what we always say to clients is, first thing is do a pulse survey, do an engagement survey where you're actually trying to understand how your staff are feeling, and measure that every 6 months, because when you see the change, you can quickly go and address something. Because I know in the FM sector, especially when I was invested in it a long time ago, the staff churn was really, really high, and if you can get that down, it is a quick win. And again, you can demonstrate to your blue chip clients how you are looking after your staff, because in the sector it is a big component. We then get on to supply chain. Just as you being vetted by your key clients, they're expecting you now to actually go a step further. And in the old days, it was the case of just asking someone whether they had an ESG policy, or in those days, a sustainability policy. That's long gone now. They're expecting you to do a lot more work in terms of supply chain traceability, responsible sourcing of materials. And so a lot of work needs to get done there. But again, if you are working with the supply chain and you're starting to get a credible supply chain, again, people down the chain are being looked after, hopefully lower instances of modern slavery, etc. So again, a win for everybody. Community engagement, again, another big piece. Corporates are wanting to see that their suppliers are giving back to communities, so that they're also benefiting. And a lot of times we'd go to a CEO and say, look, what are you doing in terms of giving back? And says, James, don't worry. We'd send a kilogram of catnip to the Battersea Dogs and Cats home, and that's good enough. Well, yeah, but you probably need to be a bit more creative than that. And it's not just about donating money and trying to tick a box. It really is about trying to understand what you do, the sectors you're involved in, the sectors your clients are involved in, and then trying to develop a community giving program, which is ours probably more so than money. And so a lot of companies now are giving their staff 1 to 2 days a year paid leave. Again, good for staff. The staff feel that they can actually contribute back. And again, everybody is winning. Then in terms of the last part, which is really how you bring all of that together. As I said, it is important to create, I think, an ESG impact report, which brings all those things together in terms of what you have done. Also the metrics, ensure that there's data behind what you're doing, and then have a strategy for the next year in terms of what you guys are going to do. Those ESG impact reports probably cost 10, 15, 20K. They're not expensive, but it actually forces the mind and gets people to think, hang on, we've done nothing in this area. We need to do more. So that's the end of my talk. It's a lot to cover in 15 minutes. My hope is that something today resonated with you, and hopefully you might have scored more than 2 out of 10 that we got. You might get closer to 10, and fingers crossed somewhere across the UK, Swindon or Blackpool, there's a plaque with your name on it. Thank you.